Lancair 235 is a kit-built airplane designed to realize the greatest possible speed from the least amount of horsepower. Normally, 1 horsepower per mile per hour is considered good efficiency among production airplanes. The Lancair surpasses 200 miles per hour on just 118 horsepower. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, pilot and one of the producers of ABC's Wide World of Flying. And this is the remarkable Lancair 235. You know, even among home builds, the Lancair is considered an unusual machine, not only because of its speed, efficiency, and its obvious good looks, but because it just may be the first of a new generation of truly easy-to-assemble composite home builds. We're here at Santa Paula, California, home of Lance Neibauer, the designer of the Lancair. And perhaps it's appropriate that Neibauer's company, Nyco Aviation, should be based here, since Santa Paula is a popular haven for both classic and home-built airplanes in Southern California. Neibauer's Lancair has become a tremendous success. In only a year and a half, Nyco Aviation has sold over 200 kits, making the Lancair design the most popular since the Christen Eagle. Lance, I understand you didn't start out to be a home-built designer. How'd you get started designing airplanes?
No, I didn't. My background is that of an artist and a designer. I like to think the artistry shows a little bit in the Lancair. The aerodynamics has been a thing I've been studying on my own for quite a few years now. I do have a background, a family background in aviation. That's my uncle was involved with Al Myers, and they brought the Myers 200. It became reality through their work and effort. My dad was involved with Stinson, and so I grew up around airplanes, but not directly involved in it. But I had a love for flying ever since that first ride in the Myers 200. That really set the hook. I looked at production airplanes when I was ready to buy something. That's probably what set the seeds in motion here, but I couldn't find anything in the production line that I was comfortable with, either for performance versus speed primarily, versus cost. So I turned right away to something that was at that time new to me, and that was the home-built movement. The number one was performance on minimal horsepower. I wanted to go fast with as little power as would do it. The other thing was cockpit comfort. I wanted to get a lot of comfort out of the cockpit and yet keep the wetted area of the airframe down. And that's a difficult thing to do usually, and that's where I saw I had a lot of advantages, particularly with composites. Composites, I think, are the future because they don't rot, they don't rust, they don't corrode, they don't fatigue. The only thing they're susceptible to is temperature. And composites to this date have used all room temperature systems, and that has some inherent problems on a hot day in Mojave, for example. Skin temperatures can get up to the point where you reach the T sub G of the material, which is a glass transition temperature. The high temperature materials, and all of ours, are done in ovens under pressure, 250-degree cure cycles. They're stable to 250 degrees, and it makes a big, big difference in the longevity of the part. We did go to the Lycoming 0235, typically 118 horse. With that, over the Continental 100 horse, we see about 15 miles an hour more and perhaps 300 feet per minute climb increase. The 235 will top out at 225, cruises at 210. And we've demonstrated that in several races, and I think the skeptics are believers now.
One of the differences between this and some other home builds is that the Lancair has the same horizontal cabin dimension as a Bonanza. Though it's definitely a snug little airplane that you put on rather than climb into, the cockpit is fairly comfortable. Neibauer limited seat recline to 22 degrees rather than the 40 to 45 degrees used in some other composite home builds. So the seat backs in a Lancair feel more like a sports car's than a home build's. The panel on the Lancair 235 is equally sporty and compact, but it's not cramped. I'm sure you'll notice that on the left side, Lance has installed 2 simulated gyros for demonstration purposes only.
As you can see, I chose control sticks versus control wheels. I think that's because anybody that flies a stick plane versus a wheel plane will agree it's a more natural feeling holding a stick for something that's moving 3 dimensions rather than a wheel.
With only 118 horsepower out front, the Lancair doesn't exactly burn up the asphalt, but stall speed is a fairly low 55 miles per hour, so the airplane doesn't need a lot of runway. Once we got the Lancair airborne, cleaned up, and accelerated to best rate of climb speed of 124 miles per hour, the VSI settled on about 1,250 feet per minute.
The landing gear is electric hydraulic. That's for simplicity. Flip a switch and the gear goes up in 6.5 seconds. Open a dump valve and the gear comes down and locks automatically. The flaps are electric. Again, that's simplicity. I also incorporated a 10-degree flap reflex, trailing edge up for improved cruise performance. Control response is sensitive, yet stable. That's the best way to put it, probably. The plane will fly hands-off very well, yet it's not a heavy-fisted airplane. It's a 3-finger airplane. You fly with 2 fingers and a thumb, and you think your turns, and you've done them. Yet if you let go of the stick, it'll trim out and fly hands-off very nicely. The plane is set up now for what I would consider relatively deluxe VFR flying. We get asked often whether or not it can be outfitted for IFR, and yes, it can, very easy to do. Speed wasn't my only goal in Lancair, but it was one of the major ones. I wanted an airplane that would be efficient in all respects, not just cruise. And with the L235 engine, I can see 210 miles per hour every day as a cruise, and yet we're doing it on about 6.5 gallons per hour. And I think that's real good efficiency. In automotive terms, that's about 30 miles per gallon.
Maneuverability is another area where the Lancair shines. Roll rate is over 115 degrees per second, so a full aileron roll requires only about 3 seconds. Elevator response is also super quick, almost too quick, in fact. At cruise speed, the elevator is so light, it seems to move practically by thought. 60-degree banks are a mere flick of the wrist away. In short, flying this airplane is a ball.
It was a very stable airplane. It trimmed beautifully, but at the same time, with its rapid roll rate and its ability to turn quickly, it's a fun airplane to fly.
It's just a real thrill to fly in the thing, the way it handles, and so it flies smooth, and everything about it. Just like it.
You want to land on other than big runways, and landing in small airports, sometimes you can't do it with a high-performance aircraft. This one, you could get into big ones and small ones and get there in a hurry.
If control response is exciting, stalls are anything but. Gear and flap extension produce very little pitch change, and the airplane feels very stable as speed is reduced. The Lancair doesn't do much at the brake except pitch down, straight ahead. Recovery is simply a matter of releasing back pressure and letting the airplane fly itself out of the stall. In the pattern, the Lancair behaves like a miniature Mooney, but with far better control response. The NLF airfoil retains plenty of lift for flare and generally has no surprises for any pilot checked out in a high-performance retractable. Despite the airplane's slippery looks, it's a docile machine around the patch.
Lance, that's about as much fun as I've ever had in an airplane. I can see why they're so popular.
Yeah, I think the home-built movement has offered some truly spectacular flying. Our builders program, in which the customer can come in and work in our shop, has also been a great benefit for them because they get expert guidance from us.
I'm over here perhaps once a week, which is a big advantage. And, you know, anything we wanted has been supplied, either information or materials.
One of the great things about the kit itself has been the support from the factory. And by that I mean that when we've needed a component or we've needed additional instructions, we can call down here one day and virtually receive whatever we need UPS the next day.
Composite construction is the easiest construction you could do in my terms, and it's so easy that you could teach somebody in a half hour and they could build the whole airplane and virtually build it with a paintbrush. Since composite is glue, everything is glued together.
We've had a few minor problems with maybe the manual not being as complete or as well diagrammed as we could have used. This is the first aircraft I've ever tried to build. The manual has since been rewritten and improved. The pre-molded parts, though, have been an absolute joy to work with. They align the way they're supposed to. They're easy to work with, easy to shape.
Oh, I'm perhaps 30%, optimistically 30% into the thing now. The gear is in, the hydraulics are not fitted, but they're all in position. The problems have mostly been getting used to working with fiberglass.
I bought the first plane, and Lance, the first one to the public. Lance was building the very first one, and I got parts shortly thereafter, before he started drawing plans or writing a book or anything else. So I'd go over there in the evenings and crawl underneath his airplane or all over it, take measurements, draw little sketches and diagrams, and he'd give me some of his notes, and I'd go home and work on my airplane.
A Lancair 235 kit costs just slightly under $16,000. Add another $10,000 for engine, prop, and avionics, and you'll spend just about $26,000 for a completed airplane. The kit does, however, include a pretty complete package of materials and prefabricated components. Remember, though, you still have to build the airplane. NICO says construction time should take about 1,000 hours if you're doing everything right. In simpler terms, this means if you work 10 hours a week, you'd spend about 100 weeks building a Lancair. In contrast, for about the same amount of money, you could buy an older Mooney, a Comanche, or a Cardinal RG. You wouldn't get anywhere near the performance of a Lancair 235, but on the other hand, you could fly one of these away the same day you handed over the cashier's check. But that's not what home builds are really all about. A man who builds his own airplane may very well be looking for economy, but he's also the kind of pilot who enjoys the satisfaction of knowing that he built the plane himself. And if the plane is a Lancair, the ultimate fun is in flying it.